Grace and peace be unto you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. My name is Bishop Albert L. Jameson Sr., and I am the chairman of the board of directors for the GMWA. I'd like to congratulate the chapters, oh my God, the upstate South Carolina chapter of the Gospel Music Workshop on the state and it is needed in this day and time. The state and future of the choir. We like to also congratulate Tony Griffin, the chapter representative, and also the host of it. Thank you on behalf of the GMWA. We like to congratulate you and we thank God for you on this evening. Peace.
Tamika, we're glad to have you up on tonight as well. Now, this is my first time meeting you. I'm honored to be here. This is my first time meeting you, but I've heard a lot of great things about you. So we're glad to have you guys. We're glad to have such a distinguished group of panelists tonight, and I know we're going to have a great discussion. And so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have noticed that the trend started in the 90s where the role of the choir began to diminish. In many churches, it has been replaced with praise teams or worship leaders and those type of things. First of all, why do you think the role of the choir has changed, and what are your thoughts on this trend? I'm going to start with you, Dr. Eddie.
Well, I think the trend. I'm echoing, but am I echoing everywhere?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Okay. I think the trend happened when artists were trying to move voices around to do concerts, and it became easier for you to take an ensemble or to get an ensemble to back you when you got to the city. And so I think people started seeing that as a new alternative, and it made its way into the church. And as a result of that, you started seeing churches employing frontline singers, which eventually became the backup group for any artist that may have come to the church. So I think that had a major impact on the new look. Because I think it started as a look before it became a movement, as far as, dwindling down to small ensembles. That's just my assessment of what I saw during that period.
Okay. Tamika, what are your thoughts on that?
I think with the entrance of the huge CCM coming into the church has really, really inspired praise and worship. And, the type of music that's popular, everybody, wants to sing like those praise and worship songs with the 3 chords in the whole song that anybody can play. And you're playing 5 songs with just those 3 chords. It could be 5 songs. How Great Is Our God, or, but anyhow. So I think with the entrance of the CCM, that's where praise and worship that I've seen have become very popular. I hire musicians and send them to churches, and sometimes I can send a person who's just learning to a particular church because they are CCM driven. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay. Dr. Tony Big Deal.
Hello. I want to make sure I'm not echoing. Okay.
You sound fine to us.
I think, Tony, from my perspective, or from what I've observed in local church settings, that we relied so much on the gospel music industry to determine the standard for music ministry in the church. And so when there is a new fad in the industry, it seeps its way into ministry. And just like Tamika said, this over infatuation with the CCM movement and the dwindling down to a select few that would stand in front of the choir or without the presence of a choir that would represent a choir. That to me was a reflection of what was going on in the industry, and a lot of the music is driven that came out of the CCM movement and still does what the market is demanding. And we're seeing a lot of our Black gospel artists co-opt a lot of white music that is being recorded. We re-record it and dip it in chocolate, and put our stand on it. And
That's a good
we bring that into our worship spaces. And so a lot of that music doesn't, from a production standpoint, doesn't sound choir oriented. It doesn't have a choir sound to it. And so I think seeing that reflected in the market gave churches permission to say, well, maybe we don't need all of these choirs, or maybe we don't need the sound of the choir in worship, all because the industry set a standard that they thought was appropriate for them. So that to me has contributed to the demise of the choirs in the local church.
Okay, let's carry on that discussion. We know right now, let's talk about the right now. We know that the COVID-19 has affected the choir. Many choirs have probably not ministered in about a year now. What do you say to these choirs and these choir members, and do you have any suggestions for the choir directors? Keeping in mind that not everybody has an unlimited budget, and we want to make sure that everybody's being safe. Tamika, let's start with you.
A choir is made up of people. In this particular season, I really think that it's important to build the person. Build the person musically, build the person spiritually, build the person mentally. So during this pandemic, I have had the wonderful opportunity to educate some people musically. We're not getting together and we're not singing at churches anymore, but what can you do at home to become a better alto? What can you do at home to become a better solo? How can you set a goal have you set goals to become a better soloist? For a keyboard and organist, who can you study, to become a better musician? So I'm learning that to inspire and empower choir members comes from inspiring and empowering the person to become the best person. Because when you grow spiritually, when you open up your mouth and make a sound, it's going to be a different sound. So for me and for the community that I serve, it's growing you spiritually, growing you musically. I was talking to somebody else about how we go to workshop, and for years we get tons and tons of sheet music, but there are hundreds of choir members that can't even tell you what key the song is in that they're learning, because they haven't learned how to determine the key signature or the time signature. So for me, it's like in this downtown time, it's educate yourself, and all that get an understanding. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop right there because I'm not the preacher for now.
That's great. Okay, Tony, what about you? You have any encouragement for the choirs who are dealing with this COVID situation?
I want to speak to the ministers of music who are struggling with trying to keep their ministries together. I think the one thing that we have to do is to remember the pastoral side of our call to music ministry. And I mean that with a small p. And if Dr. Martha Simmons was on here, she would tell me, no, it's just capital P as the other pastor meaning of the word. But we have a pastoral duty that is implied with the artistic responsibilities that we come with. I think the first thing that we need to do as leaders is to make sure we're checking on people. make sure that you're creating venues for people to come together. Even on Zoom, we can't sing on Zoom because of the delays and things like that. But creating an opportunity for folks to just see each other, to be in community with each other, to people to hear their name called,
Amen.
will take them a long way. And folks hearing from their leader. Okay, and not only you as the minister of music, but also find time for your pastor to show up in the Zoom and just be with the people and just have a presence with them. I also want to encourage ministers of music to and just to continue what Tamika was saying, to use this time, this downtime that we're in, to teach some of the things that you haven't had time to teach about in choir rehearsal. Just like she was saying, making some time to teach sight reading or the mechanics of it, doing an introductory survey of sight reading. Maybe bringing in a voice teacher to help everybody with their breathing. Turn your virtual rehearsals into master classes. Introduce hymnology to your choirs and discover the stories and the ministry and the theology of our hymns that we have sung over the years. There's all kinds of possibilities out there, and not just say, I don't know what to do with my choir. Okay, all of us are connected with experts who have knowledge in different aspects of music ministry. Invite them in to maybe do a 30-minute or 45-minute session with your choir. And you will be amazed. And you'll be amazed at how far those types of educational sessions will carry them. So when you're ready to come back, they're more equipped than they were when they left you last year. So I like to challenge music ministers to see this time as an opportunity for worship education in its many forms.
Okay, Eddie, what can you share with that?
Oh man, it's been a whirlwind of a year for us last year. I anticipated that the whole virus thing would be about 2 months, and then we'll go back to normal. It's people getting colds, and they're gonna be all right. And then it dawned on me, this thing's not going anywhere. So we were able to put together a plan of action that we used the whole entire year. Piggybacking off of what Dr. McNeil said, we brought in voice teachers to do master classes. Every section had their own master class online. Every choir had their own online workshop where there was a person that was brought in to speak specifically to that choir. It was for us last year, it was important that we stay connected, because if you don't stay connected with people while the pandemic is going on, they're not going to be reconnected when the pandemic is over. So we made it an intentional, we put a lot of intentionality on staying connected, making those who don't have access to technology, making them feel loved and appreciated. We did drive-bys. We went over to people's houses and took them little gifts and stood out in front of their homes with signs telling them we love them. And that made people stay connected with you. But it's so important during this time that you become creative. We do rehearsals online. I don't get a chance to hear everybody sing, but I try to teach at least, every month, at least teach about 2 songs. I'm teaching, y'all listen, sing your part in your house, let somebody in your house hear you sing your part. And it's worked, because we were pulling ensembles from the various choirs and using them on Sunday mornings. And so every once in a while throughout the process, we were able to introduce a new song because we had learned it online and then perfected it on Sunday morning when we came to our warm-up. So you just got to be creative. You know your church, you know your choir, you know what you're capable of doing, but you got to stay connected with the folk, and the people got to know that you have a plan. If not, you're going to have to build your choir back when this is over.
Okay. Those are some great pointers that you guys have shared. And speaking of that, I had my first Zoom rehearsal last week for the first time. So I was like, okay, we're going to see how this is going to go. And even though it was a little different, not being able to hear the choir while they were singing, But when I saw the expressions on their faces, that made all the difference in the world to me, because they were able to sing. Most of them had been able to sing in almost a year now. And so just seeing their expressions when they were singing, how they were really enjoying themselves. Now, I don't know if they were singing the right part or not, but they really seemed like they were enjoying themselves. So that was great to have that opportunity. We appreciate those that are listening in. We have about close to 100 people watching right now. We appreciate that. If you want to hit the like and share, or let somebody know about what's going on, we'd appreciate that. We're going to keep moving on. And the next question I have is, what are your thoughts on the future of the choir? And are we going to be able to keep it alive? Tony, let's start with you.
I do think we will be able to have choirs in the future. I think we have to start now thinking about how choirs will be reimagined, especially in terms of rehearsals and performances. I think choir directors and pastors and decision makers in churches need to think about, and not only in the worship and music ministry, but throughout all of their ministries, how we can hang on to this virtual space that we've created when we go back, that we do both and not drop one for the other, okay, in every aspect of ministry. Because the reality is, some folk that was with us before the pandemic will not be able to come back with us after the pandemic. Like some of our choir numbers, we have to face that reality now, okay, because of health reasons, job reasons, and any number of reasons. We can't expect the same numbers that we had before the pandemic. So we need to start thinking now how we can do the both and. That even though we may do some stuff in person, for those people that can't, are there ways that we can video, live stream the rehearsal, to still pull people into the rehearsal experience and into the actual performance aspect? Are there ways that we can, for choir members that are at home, that they can be shown on the screen above the choir while there's a real choir present? We got to start thinking about how we're going to do that, and not just rely just on the people who are able to come back and then say, okay, all those people that are still at home, we're not going to worry about them. No, that's bad pastoral care in my sense. We've got to think about how we deliver, Sunday morning worship, our annual days, especially choir day and choir anniversaries and musicals. We can't stop having things virtual. We've still got to keep the virtual mentality with us as we return to our face-to-face experiences. If we fail to do that, we're gonna miss a whole lot of people, and especially a whole lot of people who find their anchor in the church, in the music ministry, or in the choir. That's where they serve the kingdom. And so I would encourage ministers of music, if you haven't already done so, start pulling a committee of folk together to start thinking through these tough questions. Okay, and meeting quarterly or weekly, bi-weekly, whatever rhythm works best for you, and start talking about a contingency plan for returning to the space, but that has consideration for people who won't be able to physically come back. I don't think the choir is dead. I think there's a way for it to live, but we've got to think out of the box. We've got to reimagine how we do what we do, and we've got to be open to it.
Great comment. Tony, Eddie, what do you think about that, keeping the choir alive? Are we going to be able to keep it alive?
Well, my church is a historic church, 141 years old, founded by former slaves. It is a Baptist church, and there will always be a choir in the Baptist church, whether they're in a choir stand or whether they're sitting in the audience. So I believe that the choir will will last. It will stand. Again, you got, as Dr. McNeil said, you got to be creative. While the pandemic was bad because of the loss of life, it forced the church and it forced us as ministers of music to do some different things. And I probably will never have an officers meeting in person again, because I've had 11 leadership meetings on Zoom, and they have been the best thing in the world. And my officers have really, and a lot of them are on here tonight, they have taken the lead, and they've been able to see the things that I didn't see, to hear the things that I didn't hear, and they've been able to help me create a program that will sustain us through this pandemic. It hadn't been just about singing for us. It's been about building relationships. It's been about discovering talent. We did a Springfield's Got Talent night within the music ministry. We did a Name That Tune night. We did Bible trivia. We did gospel trivia. And it just engaged so many people who probably would never get an opportunity to lead a song, but their voices were heard that night, on that event. So I think it's about being creative and keeping the community connected. So as long as we do that, we will sustain and keep choirs alive.
Okay, great. Tamika, you have any thoughts on that as far as keeping the choir alive, or what we need to do, or if we'll be able to keep them alive?
I think, first of all, everyone will have a better appreciation for life, number one. The fact that we're all still here, and if we get to the place where we, come back to a choir, if we have a better appreciation for life, that means we're going to be more excited about what we're doing, how we're serving, how we're singing. Just to be singing in a choir, just having an alto on the left of me and an alto on the right of me, and we're singing the same part together, as opposed to being in the congregation with tone deaf folk, and all of that. Just singing in a choir is something about being in a choir and singing in a choir, and releasing those endorphins, with a group of people. So with that being said, I do not think that the choir is dead, and I'm at a Baptist church, so we will always have a choir. I think that once we do go back, most churches have upgraded their technology and ability to be virtual. So if we mixed our virtual abilities with the choir coming back, kind of like make it a big show type thing on day one, I think it'll be, the start of something big. So yeah, the choir's not dead, not at all.
Okay. Thank you very much. To our viewers, if you would like to contribute to this ministry to allow us to be able to continue to have events like this, our Cash App is listed at the bottom of the screen. We'd appreciate any tax-deductible donation for the Upstate South Carolina chapter of the Gospel Music Workshop of America. We're going to keep moving. The next question that I have is, how important is the pastor's role in maintaining and sustaining the choir? And I'll let either one of y'all answer that. Who wants to chime in?
Well, the pastor is the driving force. He's the visionary. He's the ultimate decision maker, or her or she is the ultimate decision maker. I have to be inclusive here. And they drive the vision. They drive the clarity of the safety plan, the reentry plan. I think it would be wise if pastors would make decisions in community with others, be it deacons, trustees, or a committee, a reentry committee. Some churches have created a reentry committee with all of the key leaders from various aspects of ministry to get a broad spectrum of perspectives on things that they need to think about before they open the doors, full time for the church. But pastors, they need to begin talking to other pastors, to see what ideas and what things that they can borrow. Understanding that everything that the church down the street does may not fit your particular church, but it doesn't hurt, just to be in community with other pastors and finding out, the kinds of questions that they are asking the kinds of things that they are wrestling with before they allow people to come back. But the pastor has an important role in this. Especially when it comes down to the safety and well-being of the congregants. And for me, that is the first order of business. Can we adequately keep people as safe as we possibly can? Do we have the resources? Do we have the budget to buy the resources that we need that will keep people safe? To me, that's where the pastoral conversation begins. Safety, wellness, infrastructure. Do we need to outsource things or outsource people to have people to come in to give us advice on how we can make our space even more safe? That to me is well worth the investment. Pulling other experts in at the table, and pastors also need to be confident enough to say, "I don't know," and them being honest and saying, "I don't know," we need to ask somebody else or find somebody else, may be the difference in saving somebody's life. So be humble enough to say, "I don't know, we need to bring somebody else in." So yeah, so that's my feedback on that pastor thing.
Great. Anybody else want to chime in about the pastor's role?
Yeah, pastor definitely has a major role, and it's important that the pastor shares that role because you may not see and know everything. There may be some minor technicalities that a musician may know that you don't know as a pastor. So it's important at that time that that responsibility of the reentry and the where the church goes from here in, it needs to be shared responsibility, because our worship services, the way we do worship, is going to be affected. From now on, the 2.5 hour services that you used to have, you're not going to be able to have those anymore. We're not going to sit through that. So pastors and ministers of music have a major responsibility in how we do worship when we go back.
So and I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're kind of talking about that now when we go back and what it's going to look like. Is the choir going to survive that? I mean, is everybody going to say, okay, well, we'll just cut out the choir and we're going to keep the praise team from now on?
I don't think it's a matter of cutting out the ministry. I think people have to like I said earlier, reimagine worship, safety at the forefront. Maybe, we may not be able to sing 4 or 5 songs we normally did before the pandemic. Maybe now we just need to do maybe an opening song and then a song before the sermon and then something to send people home. We've got to be okay with doing this a different way.
Right.
If it's going to save people's lives. It's not about us getting our way and us trying to go back the way that it was, because going back the way that it was is going to get a lot of us sick and probably dead.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about the availability of choir music. We know back in the 80s, there was choir music everywhere. Everybody was recording music. That's all we got was choir music. In the 90s, we started seeing some of the, as Tamika mentioned, the CCM music coming into the process. And now we're in the 21st century, and very few people are doing choir music. So what do we say for people who are looking for choir music? What are some avenues that they can use?
They can call me.
Okay.
That's a shameless plug, but I'm one that has made it, his calling in life the last 10 years to make sure that we get good, singable choir music that can be easily reproduced. A lot of the choir music that came out, a few years ago, the tessitura of the song, the range was so high that Mama and them couldn't get up there anymore. The hymn that the Mama and them had to sing was "The Day Is Past and Gone." So I made it my business to write and write music that's choir friendly, and also I surround myself with other songwriters who write church friendly, choir friendly, singable music. And so what we do is we pass music off on each other. You know, so their church choirs know my music, my church choir knows their music. So I think that's a critical thing. And the other thing that, you know, to get choir music is I'm taking upon myself to start mentoring some of the younger songwriters and telling them, you know, you don't have to have the tenor sing an A flat through the whole song. They can sing an E or put it in another key that's going to be comfortable if you want your music to live. You know, not that I think that I have apprehended and have reached the end of the line, but I would like to think that in 20 years or 30 years from now, when I've gone to sit on the porch to do this no more, that I've given the church enough music that choirs can be able to sing for a long time.
Okay, Nikki Williams said, "Thank you for your choir music." I don't know if you see the comment.
All right.
Okay, Tamika, what do you think about the availability of finding choir music? You there, Tamika? Wait a minute, your mic is muted. Let me unmute you. Unmute your mic. There. Try it again. There you go.
Loose here.
Okay, there it is. Well, while she's working on that,
I'm like,
what do you think?
I know how to do this. I'm sorry. Hashtag mute or unmute. But anyway, I think that we should not just settle for what we get, like what we're given on the radio, on, you know, what we see often, but we should search for music. We should you know, really, like, if there's a song we like, then get the whole album of that artist.
Mm-hmm.
And also write. I'm a writer. Write music. There's a lot of music. Well, there's a lot of content in the Bible to write music, and there is a lack of music that has biblical content.
Amen.
You know, I remember I was doing a women's conference, and their thing was faith. Why is there a lack of songs about faith? And that's what we build our whole Christian life on, faith. So writing music, networking, and you know, learning about new people, and just being open to learning more people, and asking people, like, a lot. I use Facebook a lot. Like when Resurrection Sunday comes up, what are you teaching your choirs for Easter? You get a whole bunch of stuff coming back. So, you know, just kind of like ask people, look for it, and you'd be surprised what you get.
Okay. Tony, you want to chime in on that, the availability of choir music?
Yeah. The first thing that I want to advise choir directors who are searching for, and I think my friend Pastor Joni Hunter re-echoed what Eddie said, singable music for their choirs. You got to go back to the 90s and the 80s. You got to go back and don't let the pressure of having to sing the new and latest stuff be the thing that make you feel bad or make you feel out of date for going back to get some of that Hawkins, going back to get some of that Timothy Wright stuff, going back to get some Donald Vales, going back to get, you know, Hawkins and Richard Smallwood, those kinds of, that to me was not only industry music, but it's good church music. They wrote a lot of songs based and grounded in scripture. And I'm not saying choir directors and gospel artists don't do that now.
Well,
it's just not as prevalent as it was back in the day. You got to go back, y'all. And our younger choir directors, they need to go back and learn, I think, learn that repertoire. Because a lot of the stuff, just like Eddie was saying, that's produced now, it sounds so good on the radio. It sounds so good on YouTube. But a lot of us don't live in the reality of having a Ricky Dillard and New G kind of choir in our local churches. Okay?
Say that again.
Hallelujah.
We have to stay true to the reality of the gifts that God has given us. And if you don't have tenors that can sing those A flats and B flats, don't try to sing that music. Go get some stuff that is singable. Thank you for saying that, Eddie and Reverend Joni. Go back and get that stuff that is singable. And you will be surprised at how that music will bless the people in your congregation. Because for a lot of us, that's the music we really know. And that's the music that is ingrained in us. Okay. I would also encourage people to visit Amanda Norwood at End Time Music, www.ntimemusic.com. She has a lot of scores, gospel music for those of you that are sight readers, and she does a great job of scoring albums, of contemporary gospel artists. And Amanda has also done a great job going back and getting some of the old music and creating anthologies around artists. Like there's a Donald Lawrence anthology of some of the major hits from the Tri-City Singers albums. She's done an anthology on Walter Hawkins. So the resources are out there. We've just got to pull ourselves together and find them and help each other. And when you find something, share it with another minister of music. Put it on your Facebook page. Because I guarantee you somebody else is looking for the same thing that you found. But I would encourage everybody that can and that's open to it, go back to the old stuff. Go back to that stuff was easy, it was memorable, it was singable, and it blessed the house.
And Tony, I just want to add one other thing. And for those who write a new song with the old spirit. Because there is a presence of God in the old music, the 80s and 90s music. And even before that, when you start thinking about a Roberta Martin and a Dorothy Love Coat, there was an anointing on their songs back then that if you bring those songs back now, that same power and presence will come. So if you don't want to sing old songs, then ask the Lord to give you some new songs that have an old spirit. I'm finished.
Okay, and those are good points that you guys brought out, and then we're seeing a lot of the young ministers of music are going back to a lot of those older songs, and a lot of the artists are going back and redoing a lot of those songs as well. So we're glad to see that, because those were some great songs, and those songs really got us through and everything, and they really ministered to us. So we're happy to see that. Now we talked a little about the virtual rehearsals. Maybe everybody is not familiar with how we do that. Can somebody kind of talk on that, a way of doing the virtual rehearsal? Because we're saying that, but everybody may not be familiar with how we can conduct a virtual rehearsal. Anybody?
I'll be happy. Now, this is not the textbook way and not the only way you can do it, but I do my virtual rehearsals. The first few minutes or so is fellowship time. Everybody's coming on, and you're laughing and talking, having a good time. We'll go into prayer if there are any prayer requests for that evening, and then from there I go into the music presentation. When I first started out, I was trying to do an hour and 15 minutes virtual rehearsal, and I just thought that was the most wonderful thing until I realized I had 3 more to do that week. So what I do now is the whole event is about 45 minutes long, and I will most of the time I will play a new song all the way through. Then I go back and I will teach the parts. Sopranos, this is your part. I'll sing it through for a couple of times. Altos, this is your part. Tenors and blah blah blah. And then I'll go back and I'll play the track again. Either I'm playing it on the keyboard or I'm playing the actual recording of the song, and y'all sing along with me. And we may do that a couple of times. And then we'll do that the same thing again at the next rehearsal. And I will send them a PDF of my presentation. I usually do it in PowerPoint. And so I'll send them the lyrics. I'll put the lyrics on the screen in PowerPoint, while we're doing our Zoom rehearsal. And I may say, anybody got a question? You need me to go back over a part. Very similar to what we do in person rehearsal. And it's worked. It's worked. People enjoy it. have a great time, and they come on, because they know it's just not going to be us just gathering just to look at each other, but we're actually being constructive and doing something positive.
Okay, great. Okay, another thing is, what about some things that we're having to think about now that we never really had to think about before? Like, what about musicians sharing the instruments, singers sharing the microphones and everything like this? This is something that we really hadn't thought about a lot in the past. We just did it and everything like that. So how is that going to change, or do you see that changing in the future, or what are we going to have to do to make sure everything is safe?
Well, Tony, from what I've seen a mixture of different things for worship services and concerts where there are live musicians present. I've seen where musicians have been masked and they are socially distanced if you have the space to do that. Okay? So it may mean you might have to reconfigure some of your furniture in your church just to make sure the musicians stay safe. I've seen some things where musicians aren't wearing masks. Sometimes they're socially distanced and sometimes they're not. I think we need to find out what works best for us and the space that we're given. But again, going back to the first priority for me is keeping them safe. Okay, and it may mean us having worship services where there's just piano. And not necessarily bass guitar, drums, and lead guitar. Maybe you just need to have a piano player there and a soloist, or a piano player and a trio or quartet, if it means keeping people safe. And I know that with church musicians who are part-time musicians who depend on that revenue, for their livelihood, churches need to take that into consideration and maybe allow them to come in when there's nobody else in the space to record, with a small praise team or soloist or what have you. There are ways of doing it, but I advocate for finding the way that will keep everybody safe. Finding the way that will keep everybody safe within the confines of the space that you have allotted. The space is what will determine what you're able to do safely.
Right.
Okay? Take in consideration the architecture and the layout of your church first. Okay? Before you make any other major decisions, and make adjustments as you need. Okay? I think people will understand whatever your decision is if it's based on if you have their well-being at stake first.
Right. Okay, Patricia Ann Green has a question. I guess she's referring to the virtual singing. She says, are you able to hear the singers?
No, not able to hear them. But I know whether they learned their part, if they're part of the ensemble that's asked to come on Sunday. We suspended all of our in-person singing as of the first Sunday in January. The cases are growing in our community, and we decided to err on the side of caution. And now we're doing videos of our choirs from previous services, and that's been very, very helpful for us. But we have made it a point of social distancing. We do not go in a room that is closed. We do all of our rehearsals and our gathering on Sunday to review music in a wide open space where everybody may be anywhere from 6 to 11, 12 feet apart. And then we go on stage, we're spread out. We've been blessed at our church in that even when we do go back and we're going to have to spread out, I even think with the vaccine, we have to spread out for a season. We're in a position that we can get a lot of people in a lot of spaces with them being spread out. A large choir stand where I can put easily a good 15 or 20 spread out. And then we have a stage I can get another 10 or 11 people on there spread out at least 6 feet apart. But I would not use that many singers even when we come back. It's going to be a slow crawl for us. You're not going to be able to come back and have the big old mass choir and march in, sing, and sign me up for the Christian Jubilee. You're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah,
so
Tony,
make an adjustment.
I want to thank you, Eddie. I totally agree with what you're saying. I want to honor some of the comments that we're seeing especially from I see Anya Lattimore Ware was saying disinfect. Yes, that old traditional mic passing and everybody's talking out of the same mic. We can't do that anymore, and that might mean from a budget standpoint, we might have to go out and get some new microphones so that there is no mic sharing. Even from the pulpit mic, maybe every people that are presiding in worship, they need to have their own mic. The pastor needs to have his or her own mic. The person reading the scripture needs to have his, and you see these variations where people are wiping mics down and wiping stuff. We still need to do that.
Yes.
But if you are able to, maximize the number of microphones your sound system can hold, do that. And that might mean it may just be pastor and an assistant and not 10 or 12, ministers in training on the roster. It may be 2 people may need to sit up there because we only have 2 mics. And those 2 mics are going to keep everybody safe. Okay? Same thing with lead singers. We can't go back to that mic passing thing. I also want to honor Dr. Herb Jones put in the comments too about the singer's mask. I don't know if any of you have seen those, but I would encourage you to Google singer's mask, and they are a new phenomenon, and they work. And some of them are so good you can't tell the difference of the quality of the sound. If the singer had the mask on or if they didn't, you couldn't tell. Some of them are that good. So and they range from like $35 to $55 a piece, depending, the quality of the product. But I have seen churches use those, and it depending on the quality, you can't tell they have on the mask. So I would encourage you to Google that singer's mask and go to YouTube. There's some demonstration videos on YouTube of how to use a singer's mask. So thank you for that, Dr. Jones and Miss.
Okay, Tamika, we're getting some kind of static in your mic. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But did you want to chime in on about the safety aspect of sharing instruments and mics or anything that you haven't? I know you got disconnected at one point.
I think they covered it all. You just have to use, you just have to be safe. Lots of hand sanitizer and spray. You just have to, before and after.
Very, very good.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in too. It's important that you establish a COVID-19 protocol for your ministry. That's one of the things that we did. We gave them, these are the guidelines. This is how we try to keep you safe. Are you willing to adhere to these guidelines? Yes or no, you sign off. And even after we've done all this, we cannot guarantee that you won't become infected somewhere. But we want you to know that your church is doing all that we can to keep you safe. If they say that's not good enough for them, then we know that they're not to serve in this capacity at this time. And that's been critical. And I think more churches are going to have to do that as we start going back and using more people. It just cuts down on the liability of the church. This is a volunteer place, but we want to make sure that people know that we're trying to keep them safe and that we're not responsible if anything really happens. I mean, I'm seeing churches doing that everywhere now.
Okay, we have a question on the screen. It says, how do you all feel about face shields? And I guess that's kind of what you were just talking about, Tony. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, I've seen some ministries use face shields, and there's some that are out there that are highly effective, that don't fog up. Some of them do, but there are others that there's some that they advertise that they won't fog up. And then when people get them, they fog up. You have to be careful about the quality of those. But I also want to bring to attention, Tony, the fact that in the most recent days, Dr. Fauci, who is one of the leading experts on the coronavirus, is now saying, especially with these new strands of the virus that are coming out, that it's not a bad idea to wear double masks. it's gotten to the point now where people are starting to do that. They're wearing 2 masks. So that might be an appropriate protocol, as Eddie was alluding to, especially for your singers and people who will be speaking in worship, to wear 2 masks.
When you say wearing 2 masks, are you saying while they're singing or while they're speaking or in
Yes.
between?
Yes.
Oh,
or both.
okay.
Well, whatever works for people, because ultimately people are going to do whatever is best for them. And sometimes, people will take them off while they're speaking or singing, and then put them right back on. So either
Yeah.
way, I think it would be best. It would be advantageous, given how these strands are popping up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this: what do y'all think? Should we be having live concerts right now? What are your thoughts on that?
No. Well, no.
Super spreader events. No.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I've been bothered by some of the ones that I've seen. I've been really bothered, and a lot of times I can't watch them because I don't want to witness. I don't want to be able to say, But now's the time, I think, to really work on your ministry, develop your ministry, grow your ministry, get yourself together spiritually. Because this pandemic is eventually going to be over, and God's going to expand your borders and give you a greater opportunity. And the pandemic, I don't want to make it a theological issue, but God is behind everything, and He has a hand in everything. And I think part of this is God's way of just trying to prepare the church for what's next. You've been going to church Sunday after Sunday shouting, everything to do. Well, I'm closing up the church now, and I just encourage people, keep your ministry strong, keep doing what you need to do to keep your ministry connected and keep your choir fresh. But I don't think this is a time for us to be doing a concert, and stop working so hard to be seen. If God's anointing is on you, whether you're able to do a concert, do a recording or not, it's going to be on you. And sometimes we need to stop trying to be seen, because there's a reason why God is hiding us. He's trying to grow us up. And so I just, nobody wants to do concerts and conferences and workshops as much as I want to do, but this is a season to prepare yourself for what's next.
Okay. Good point. Now, we're all... Go ahead, Tamika.
I'm sorry. It's easy to forget all of the social distancing and all of the rules when you are in a congregation, in the choir, in a concert. You want to hug people, you want to child, you sang, all of that. So just don't do it.
Right. I think if everybody listens to that, then we can all come back together. We can all have concerts, and we can all do all those things together and everything like that. But right now, I think a lot of the things that we're seeing, that's causing us a delay and us all being able to do those things. So those are some good points. Now, we're all members of conventions, music conventions. What do you think is going to be the history of the music convention? What kind of changes are going to have to be made, or what's going to happen with the music convention? Because we know right now that would definitely be a super spreader event if we had those things going on with all those choirs in there singing and all those people gathered together. Tamika, you want to start first? What do you think is going to happen with these conventions and conferences? Unmute your mic.
Here we go.
Uh-oh. There you go.
I'm telling y'all, there's something going on over here. But anyway.
Set her free.
So the question is, what's the future of conventions and conferences, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Whew. I don't even know. That's a great question. But speaking of workshops, we have our first virtual workshop scheduled for this Saturday, where there are different classes and there's a main session and all of that. And we're kind of like testing it out for future conferences. But I kind of see that's where conventions and conferences are going. Like, oh, thank you. It's called Crescendo, and we are growing beyond measure despite limitations.
Amen.
We're growing spiritually, mentally, physically, and musically. We have a trainer, we have a nutritionalist, because if we can't even walk up the steps, how are we going to sing? You know, I remember now. I play the organ. Every Sunday I'm on the organ and I'm singing. So you know, I've mastered that for over 25 years. Not mastered, but I'm mastering. But I had to sing at a concert for Christmas, and I had a little heel on and my little gown on. So I had to give you stage presence. I had to breathe. I had to hit these high notes. And let me tell you something. It was a struggle. Okay, the struggle is real. So just cardio helps with the breathing and all that. So anyway, this conference talks about the importance of growing physically, you know, because we cannot be musical wonders or a spiritual wonder and our temples are out of order. So anyway, I'm going back. Let me go back to the original question. But yes, virtual conferences and conventions, I think, is where we're headed until, you know, we get that okay. And it can be done. We just have to use our creativity with how we're going to do it. I learned at a leadership conference that limitations causes us great opportunities to be creative. So, you know, I believe that's kind of like where we're going.
Okay. Anybody else want to talk about conferences?
I think
I believe the Lord going to have us home.
I think if these conferences want to stay around, they've got to reinvent themselves. They've got to learn how to walk and chew gum at the same time. Meaning that if and when there's a time, just like I alluded to earlier, for these conferences to reconvene, even on a limited basis, they still have to deliver a high quality product to an online audience that will never come to that conference physically for whatever reason. I am impressed with the ingenuity and creativity of some of these conferences that have been able to deliver an online presentation of some type. The Thomas Dorsey Convention did an online conference this past summer. GMWA did an online conference. And there are others that have found a way to reconvene and reimagine, okay, or reorientate themselves for the digital world. I've seen some week-long conferences go to a day or 2 days. Okay, and so these conferences have to be open to representing themselves in ways that are different from how they presented themselves prior to the pandemic. I don't think. I think conferences who are just like in person only are probably going to fizzle out and die if they don't embrace the technology and all the benefits of the technology.
Okay. Eddie, you
I
have anything to say
co-sign
about
everything. Yeah, I co-sign everything that the other panelists have said. But and I'm not a prophet, but I do believe that we're going to be home again this year.
wow.
I think that the rollout of the vaccine is going to be great, but I don't think it's going to happen in the numbers that we need for it to happen in the time that we need for it to happen. So I think it would behoove all of the major music conventions to start planning their digital platform for 2021. So,
and I think
as much
that's
as I
great
want to see-
that Tamika, that you guys are doing a virtual conference and everything like that. And we'll talk about that a little more at the end of this presentation, and you can share a little more insight on that. But I think that's a great idea. We have about 120 people watching right now. So if you're enjoying this, hit the like and hit the share or whatnot. And again, if you want to contribute to it, we love any tax-deductible donation. We have a question that came up, and that's from one of our viewers. It says, are the panelists seeing correct social distance behavior at funerals?
Not consistently. There, especially, and I don't mean to blast them out, like in the Kojic Church, they some of their high profile funerals have been super spreader events that have resulted in the deaths of some of their bishops and upper administrative folk. It's it's not been consistent. I'm seeing a lot more graveside services, and funeral. There are some funeral homes that are allowing wakes and funerals, but with a limited number of persons, and depending on the space that they have available, the chairs are socially distanced. But it also I don't know. It's very hard to grieve, and for us as Black folk, when we grieve, we like to touch, we like to
Oh,
hug,
yes.
be close to each other, and to be in that situation where you physically want to embrace someone and you can't, and you're hurting on the inside. That's hard, but it's a tension that we've got to walk through for now. And but I just hope that the funeral homes will work harder to encourage and push those protocols to keep people safe.
Tamika, what about you?
Okay, so I do an average of 4 funerals a week. I think every day this week I've had a funeral, and every day next week, 4 days next week, I have a funeral. I do something called funeral shenanigans because we see lots of funny things at funerals. So I'll put that on Facebook, but that's a sidebar. But I work for about 6 or 7 different funeral homes. So just overall, I've seen great social distancing and all of that. I'm grateful that the organ or the keyboard or the piano is away from everyone. So I'm grateful because of that. But for the most part, I've seen like this one family today, they were all on the front row. So I'm assuming that they all lived in the same household. But like I said, for the most part, they've been following the protocols over.
Ed, have you noticed anything with the funerals?
What I noticed at my church that we have not had any. Our pastor made a conscious decision to keep everybody safe. And so we have not had any funerals in the sanctuary. All of our funerals have been graveside. There have been like a couple that have been in the funeral home. I did one in a funeral home, and it was 30 minutes because the pandemic was climbing high mountains, real high. And so he made sure that service, since it was inside, was real short. So, the videos that I see online, most of the funerals they're not practicing social distancing at all.
Yeah, we had one funeral at the church, and most of our funerals have been at the graveside, but we had one at the church, and it was in the parking lot, and they had all the chairs spread out and everything like that, and so we had the singers one place and the keyboard another place and everything like that, and we had somebody making sure that the microphones were being wiped off and those type things when people were using those. So that was one way of doing that. So let's talk about the next topic. We know a lot of musicians have been furloughed due to this pandemic. A lot of them who were playing on a regular basis, there are not as many opportunities for income as a result of the pandemic. What recommendations or encouragements do you have for those who find themselves in that predicament? You have any thoughts for that?
I have seen a lot of my musician friends use this pandemic as an opportunity to become like super creative. A lot of them are hosting concerts in their living room with them at their pianos, or they're playing their saxophones or whatever, or in another part of their house. They've turned it into a studio, or I've also seen some virtual projects where instrumentalists or musicians are in different places physically, but I record the piano part where I am, you record the saxophone part, you record, and somebody else is recording the drum, and they bring all of those pieces together to make one virtual performance, and they market it and sell it, or do a series of those and turn it into a concert that people pay for to have access to. I have seen at the beginning of the pandemic, musicians were like, "What we gonna do? What we gonna do?" Because a lot of churches, like you said, Tony, were furloughing musicians. But I saw in my circle of influence and in my network, a lot of musicians pivoted really, really quickly and found ways to widen their visibility and their creativity, and using Facebook, Instagram, and now there's a new app out now called Clubhouse that is audio only. It's giving it's created a new platform or a new way for musicians to reach audiences that may have never heard of them before. So at first, I saw it as a concern, but now I've seen more musicians take advantage of the opportunity and make it into something that works for them.
Okay.
Another thing that, in addition to everything that he just named, lessons. I've seen a lot of musicians, vocalists, lessons. A friend of mine kind of really had the opportunity to build his virtual academy, and it's amazing, and but that's a great way, to bring in some income. And I've had the opportunity to send some musicians out to jobs, but I believe it's what the Bible say, your gift will make room for you. There are many things that we can do, with just being in church. Sometimes we had that one-sided mindset, but now because of this pandemic, it caused us to be creative and bring extra streams in for us.
The only thing I can think of, Brother Tony, that if you're a keyboardist that you could possibly do during this time is to start creating tracks, keyboard accompaniment tracks, because soloists, they're going to sing at the funeral. Everybody's social distancing, but I can bring a track or something on a MP3 on my phone, and so musicians can easily, if you're a keyboard player, can do that and sell your tracks, for $20, $25. I don't know. I haven't had to do it yet. I'll get some suggestions tonight on how much I need to charge when I do start. But that's something they can do.
More than $25.
That is a great idea, Ed, and not only for soloists, but also for churches. I've had pastors contact me and say, would you be our worship leader for this Sunday? And I have led virtual worship for churches right here in my living room. And I probably would have been able to, to do something like that, had the pandemic not happened. I've also seen, Tony, how a lot of gospel artists have redefined how they engage with the local church during this pandemic. One of the artists that I've noticed, I think he was probably one of the first ones I saw do this. Ernest Pugh, shortly after the pandemic hit, he repurposed his ministry and made himself available as a virtual worship artist or a virtual worship leader, where he packaged himself or created opportunities. Let me put it this way. He created opportunities for small, medium, and large churches to engage him as a worship leader, a virtual worship leader. So he could pre-record 1 or 2 songs or do them live as the service was taking place, depending on, how the church wanted to engage him. And so it gave smaller churches who probably couldn't afford to fly him in and put him up in a hotel and, do all of that stuff. It gave them an opportunity to have Ernest Pugh as a part of our worship service. So I'm seeing more and more of those gospel artists who are finding ways to do their ministry differently and open themselves up to a larger audience in terms of touching churches that they probably would not have been able to go to had the pandemic not hit. And Ernest Pugh is one of those.
Yes, absolutely. I've had him at our church as a virtual worship guest. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great points. We're getting near the end of our forum, so if anybody has any questions, make sure you put them in the comments really quick as we prepare to close out. Do any of you all have anything else that we didn't cover that you want to share with our listeners today regarding the choir, or anything that we've talked about, or anything that we didn't talk about? I want to give you the opportunity to do that.
I want to encourage ministers of music, if I can, to create virtual worship experiences outside of Sunday morning. We've done 3 virtual concerts this year. But basically, I just brought our worship team in to record a couple of songs, and then we mixed our video with other videos from other worship teams and churches that we solicited and put together a 45-minute to an hour concert. We did it for Pentecost Sunday. We did it for we just did it for ML King birthday. We did it for Labor Day. And it has made an eternal difference because people still like concerts. And if we have a wherewithal and the ability to create those virtual concerts, I think when we come back, that will cause people to even come more to our concerts because they've seen what we do live. And use this as an evangelism opportunity. We've got people that have, quote unquote, become virtual members because they were invited to a virtual concert. So now every Sunday they're connected to our church. They become members. Now, after the pandemic is over, they may go back to their churches. There are a lot of churches are not doing anything online. But people are looking for somewhere to connect and be a part of the community. And your virtual concert can serve as a tool to get them to see what your church has to offer. So I encourage you to be creative in that regard.
Okay. Before we go, anybody else comments? We see that comment from Elliot Smith, and I know we have several ministers that are watching. So we can get somebody to reach out to him, perhaps maybe through his inbox, with his his comment on here. So if you want to do that, anybody else have anything that you want to share with us?
I want to offer as a suggestion can you hear me, Tony? Okay, I want to offer as a suggestion for ministers of music who work at a church that has video archives. Go back into the archives over the past couple of years and pull out some moments in worship that were memorable for your congregation. If there was a Sunday where you all sang "Great is Thy Faithfulness" and it hit, like they say, the young people say, it hit differently on that Sunday, pull that out and share that with the people. Or pull out a series of moments in worship that have been meaningful for your congregation, and maybe join those into one experience and post it to your social media, or send a link to your congregation and say, here are highlights from the past 3 Christmas services or the past 3 Easter services that we've done in the past, some highlights, with the dance ministry, with the choirs, with the drama ministry. Those kinds of things can really, really be meaningful and connect with your choir, your congregation, not only your choir members, but the entire congregation. Also, I would suggest create playlists for your congregations to listen to. We're getting ready to go into the season of Lent. So is there a collection of songs that you can pull together on Spotify and iTunes that you can share with your congregation? Here's a playlist for you to listen to during the season of Lent. Because there's a time of introspection and people are, reevaluating their spiritual journey in preparation for Easter. So what is the soundtrack to help people journey through their Lenten, through the Lenten season? We can do those kinds of things and post them and share them with our congregations. and not necessarily think of, we have to do a new performance or we've got stuff from years past. Go back and pull that stuff out and use it again.
Amen.
Thank you very much for those comments. I appreciate all your input. We've had a great discussion tonight. She's back. We've had a great discussion tonight. This is great information. We've gotten some great comments and everything. And I really do appreciate you guys, your time on being on here and the information that you shared tonight. As I said in the introduction, this is not our first time having a panel discussion like this, but it's our first time doing it in this format. And I think, this pandemic has caused us to have to do things that we've not done before. And this is actually great because we're actually reaching more people through this format, people who are farther away than we were when we were having it inside the church walls. So I think it's just been a great thing. I appreciate the Upstate South Carolina chapter for allowing us to do this tonight. And again, I appreciate all the panelists for being here tonight, and this has been really great. And we'll have to do this again sometime in the future.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so sorry. This connection over here is so bad. I have to say this. I want to encourage the female musician. There's a female musician who's one word of encouragement away from being a great wonder. So I want to not just encourage female musicians, but I want to encourage male musicians to encourage female musicians.
Amen.
We out here. We do this, but we don't get the push that we need. They call me the Twinkie of Philly because why? I play at the Women's Day services at Lonnie Hunter's church. I don't know if y'all know Lonnie Hunter. I played the Women's Day services at Michi Waller Church. I don't know if y'all know him. I play at all of the major churches as the female organist, but I'm the only one. But there are more people, but we lack that encouragement, some of us, that we need. So I want to encourage you guys to encourage a female musician. And I want to encourage every female musician to take this time to grow yourself. And let's come out of this pandemic kicking and screaming, okay?
And I'm glad you mentioned that. We have several female musicians who are listening tonight, so we'll have to do a better job of doing that. Tamika, you want to talk about your conference real quick?
Yes, real quick. It's called Crescendo. Everybody knows what that means. We are growing beyond measure despite limitations, growing in the areas of music, spiritual, mental, because I strongly believe that if we are clear in our mind, if we have healthy thinking patterns, we can be better musicians and better singers. It's hard to minister with anxiety. Okay. So we're growing mentally, we're growing physically. We have several master classes. We have a keyboard, somebody doing a keyboard class. You can show up to this conference with your keyboard and you can learn on the keyboard. We have Man Roberts, who's the music director for John Legend, who is also my godson and who is a part of the GMWA from a child. We have someone teaching you everything you need to know about preparing yourself to go into the studio to record, because you can't just show up and start singing and your voice is all dry and you're just not prepared for it, because you really need to take the time to prepare. Vocal health, all of these things. We have a drum class, we have a word and worship class, we have Paris Bowens, who plays keys for Israel, and Tyrone Tribbett. Let me see. We have choir director class on there, and much more. Artist development. Michi is also going to speak about the gospel music industry. It is one of many, and it is this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. All are welcome. It only costs $15. Okay.
That's great.
So if you want more information, you can inbox me at Tamika Furby. And this is our first chapter event of 2021. Thank you for the opportunity to share that.
It's wonderful.
Thank you all, and thank you for sharing with us. And at this time, we're going to end our broadcast. If you guys would just kind of stay on the line a little for a few minutes after we finish. But we appreciate you being here again tonight, and we're looking forward to having some more discussions in the future. Thank you all, and thank you everybody who viewed tonight. Again, if you want to contribute, we'd love to have any contributions that you would like to give towards this ministry so we can continue to do events like this. And we want to do as many free events as we can. We know we could have charged for this event, but we really wanted to get out to a lot of people tonight. So that's why we did it that way. Everybody have a good night, and y'all take care.